Today's topic, financial planning for a medical resident. One of my favorite pieces of the financial planning puzzle. You just hit training, you're out of medical school, you finally have some money coming in. Now what do we do? From student loans to budgeting to homeownership to insurance to investing, we're going to cover it all. That's all coming up next, so stay tuned. First topic, a big one, student loans. You are at a very good spot to take advantage of this. So depending on where you are in your training, so if you're early on, we always say the best time to get your student loans organized is that transition from medical school to intern year PGY1, because that's where you have the most leverage going forward. We're going to keep things simple here for student loans. So first thing is just get your student loans organized. Know which loans are federal. Know which loans are private. When you even dig into your federal loans even more, what loans are already direct loans? What loans are Perkins loans? What loans are federal family education loans, also known as FFEL loans? Knowing those little pieces is very vital in you getting organized going forward with your student loans. So first, just get organized. Second piece is, how are we going to do this? How are we going to tackle this? At this phase of your professional career, we probably have two routes. Route one is public service loan forgiveness. You're at a teaching hospital. You have, few years of residency coming up here. Depending on what your specialty is, you probably have a few years of fellowship. Then you have your attending career. The attending career is usually where you might end up leaving a nonprofit, or you leave academia and you go private practice. Maybe you know that ahead of time. If that's the case, we should start preparing for more of an aggressive payoff, because public service loan forgiveness may not be in our cards. But the main goal here is just to get on a good track going forward. If you're going for public service loan forgiveness, get on the proper repayment plan. Add an annual reminder to your calendar to recertify all 12 payments. Don't let them pile up. I do this for a living. I help a lot of our physicians early on, then we get into a good habit. But early on, you're going back to that hospital, your residency, and then your fellowship, and then you have some years of your attending. It's not fun going back to HR departments to get those things certified. Put an annual reminder, get them certified every year, certify your income every year. They'll bombard you to do that one no matter what, but add good reminders. The key here is for student loans, two routes, at least in my professional opinion, and building a lot of these plans. We're either starting to prepare to get organized for public service loan forgiveness, or we're starting to get properly prepared for going through the aggressive payoff on the private side. Now, if you have private loans in there, so let's keep federal loans on their own little island and figure out which way we're going to go forward. If you already have private loans in there that you're going to have to start paying back, maybe look for a better rate at this point. You have some income coming in. Hopefully you have still a good debt to equity ratio. So really the main goal is here, we're trying to get your student loans organized. Next up, budgeting. We know everyone thinks it's like a swear word. Budgeting's important. Think of it as money in, money out, and telling your money where to go. Maybe that's a better buzzword for you. We have another post literally called Budgeting for Medical Residents. We have a template in there. Read through that post. It's also if you scroll down from the video here in the actual blog post that we're attaching this to, scroll down and you're going to see an actual link that'll take you to the actual Excel spreadsheet to download on your own. But you have to start to build a budget. Walk through, hey, here's my gross pay. All right, I got to pay Uncle Sam. I have some deductions coming out from the hospital for my health insurance and maybe the 403B, etc. Okay, here's my net pay that actually hits my bank account. We got to pay rent. We need food. We got utilities. I'm going to get some disability going. Whatever the example would be, you have to start budgeting now. Start building that financial foundation. Start building those good habits now while you're in training, so that by the time you do hit your attending status and you have a multiple increase in your income, you've already had good habits in place. You have a good budget in place. Yes, you're going to have a little bit of lifestyle creep in there. That's natural. But we have good, strong foundation already getting built and in place. Next up is your emergency fund. Whether you call it emergency fund or your rainy day fund, we want you to start putting some money towards your emergency fund, having some cash on hand. And while I know it almost feels like you're poor, even though you have probably a salary between $60,000 to $70,000, and by all means that is not labeled as poor, but I know that there's a lot of time and energy going into that. I also know that student loans are starting to take up a big piece of it, so at the end it doesn't feel like there's much, but you should start to put, even if it's as small as $100 or $50 a month, start directing some money towards an emergency fund, a rainy day fund, even starting to save money for maybe a possible home down payment. I know you have a physician mortgage in your back pocket, but still, there's still benefits to trying to get a more conventional mortgage. Maybe you're just starting to save up some cash because you know that you have to fly all over the country when you start to interview for your attending position. Those are things that we want you to start putting some money aside for. Continue to build those good habits. So main goal here is start to build up those cash reserves, even if it's as small as $50 a month. Just get in that habit of putting some money aside. All right, the next topic, I'm going to be honest, the headline's a little bit harsh, where it says avoid homeownership at all costs. There are certain circumstances, and we have many clients that have come to us for one-time plans or even ongoing planning that have owned a home or own a home while they're in training. So there are circumstances where it makes sense. We just think if we had to make a more general classification, usually doesn't make sense to be a homeowner while you're in training, because we still have a lot of unknowns. So that's why we don't like it. Can it work? It can. Some other notes to add in here. I know that we like the term physician mortgage because it sounds like it was custom built for us. But you have to keep an eye out for physician mortgages. We put a whole nother blog post on physician mortgages that we could put in there as a reference for you. But if you can start to save up, and if you can save up enough to get a conventional mortgage, that could be an option too. Yes, you're probably going to have PMI if you're less than 20%, but sometimes what we've seen is physician mortgages have a little bit higher interest rate compared to a conventional mortgage. Not all the time, but sometimes. If that's the case, you want to start to do the cost comparison. Maybe a smaller down payment with PMI in a conventional mortgage actually ends up being a better deal in the long term compared to no money down or a very small amount of money down with no PMI, but a higher interest rate. So just keep an eye on that. So while the actual title is a little bit harsh, there is some flexibility there, but for the most part, try to avoid homeownership while you're in your training. Maybe once you sign that contract, if you're fortunate, to be in the same city, maybe there it makes a little bit more sense, but early on, keep some flexibility. Next big topic is insurance. So for the most part, we're looking at 4 things here. The 2 that we're going to cover in detail: disability insurance, term life insurance. You should have malpractice insurance. You don't need a financial planner to tell you that, but you should have good malpractice. Understand your insurance, how it works. Make sure there's tail coverage. Probably not as vital if you're just getting into training, but even as you transfer hospitals, make sure you understand how that works. The other policy that we won't dig into too much, but we pretty much build into every financial plan, is something called an umbrella policy, which just adds extra liability for you. So keep an eye on those 2. The main things that we think are important here are for certain disability insurance. So the base plan, whether you're in residency or fellowship, is going to be a $5,000 per month base plan. You're looking at premiums around $150 a month. Might be a little bit lower if you're male, could be a little bit higher if you're female, just because of how the claims have been in the past. If you're female, try to find something called unisex rates. Unisex rates will help keep your rates lower. Main things you're looking for, again, your base benefit's going to be $5,000. That's just how they're all built. You're looking for true ONOC with specialty specific language. You're going to look for guaranteed insurability, which just means that when you go from training, whether we're talking resident or fellow, to your attending role, that you already have guaranteed insurability built in there, so that when you get that new contract, you don't have to reprove your health. You would just be able to increase your policy by showing that higher income. So we think disability is really an insurance that you should have no matter what here. It doesn't really matter from a family perspective. For the most part, you should have disability. So make sure you're looking for good, true ONOC disability insurance. The one that has some flexibility to it is term life insurance. If you've seen our videos before, if you read our blog posts, we're fans of term life insurance. We don't think you have to overcomplicate things with permanent life insurance. If you're a single individual, maybe term life insurance doesn't make sense yet, but maybe if you have a spouse, or if you have children, or maybe you had someone that co-signed on your student loans, you can start to make the argument that term life insurance gets more attractive here. So keep an eye on that, build around it for your exact situation there. But disability insurance, I think, should be in your plan no matter what. Term life insurance depends on a case-by-case basis. But the good news is term life insurance is relatively inexpensive, especially if you're in good health. So crunch some numbers, see what you're looking for. But that's what we want to talk through from the insurance side of things. Last but not least, investing. So at this point, again, we know there's not a ton of funds that hey, I'm just going to max out my 403b every year. We know that we're probably not at that level of flexibility just yet. Maybe we are. And if you are, great job. That's awesome. Here's how we look at it. If they're offering you a match, let's just use a 403b as our example. If they're offering you a match on your 403b, at least try to take advantage of that. Now, a lot of hospitals will not provide matches while you're in residency or fellowship. For whatever reason, we see that quite a bit. Some do, some don't. So at a bare minimum, try to take advantage of that. That at least starts the compounding interest clock, which in our opinion is the most powerful tool in all of finance. So that's part one. Maybe you start to get a Roth IRA started up. You probably don't even have to add in the term backdoor Roth IRA just yet because your income's not high enough. Now, depending on your spousal situation, keep an eye on that. But at least start the investing clock. If you are going for public service loan forgiveness or even traditional forgiveness and you're using an income-driven repayment plan, the more you save to your 403b, 401k, 457b, even your HSAs, FSAs, the lower you can get your adjusted gross income, the lower your payments are. So that is one thing to keep in mind there. We want you to try to get your adjusted gross income as low as possible to keep those numbers lower from an adjusted gross income perspective, but then that's also going to lower your income-driven repayment amount. So keep that in mind from an investing perspective. And there you have it, financial planning for a medical resident. We wanted to give you some big important topics for you to keep an eye on, things to get organized as you really start to build that financial foundation. There's a lot of moving parts in the world of personal finance, but you really just have to get a few things organized, get a few things on autopilot, and you'll continue to build that foundation very strong. So we hope you got some good content out of today's video. As always, if you have questions, shoot us a note. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next video.